my parents always tell me, Anna, you can get a career anytime, but you can only experience and run and, chase your dreams now. Like now it's happening and you need to like go for it. So that's something I think everyone can take on board is.
G'day everybody, this is Damien from Pillar Performance here, and you're listening to the Pillar Performance podcast, a show that we've created really for people who love all things endurance, all things sport, but what you're going to hear a lot about on this show is predominantly triathlon, running, cycling, and when we break down running, we break it down into track, road, and also trail running now, which is really special considering the guest I've got with me today. Today we are chatting with Anna McKenna, who recently has joined the Pillar family and has a very unique running journey. Anna started running, which she's going to give us her background, but started running competitively in high school. But then quite uniquely during the pandemic, Anna was part of the airline industry, which, as we all know, was obviously, unfortunately, shut down during this period. And Anna had to, like so many others, had to stop working. She picked up running. She joined a social running group, a way to meet people, which I'm sure many of us can relate to. From there, she started to really enjoy the process of getting back into running, and she actually went so far as to obviously start to employ a coach, and from there really hasn't looked back. Anna has gone on to now dominate the ultra running scene, probably realising her niche now lies in a longer form of running. She went on to win the Surf Coast Century 100, the Margaret River Ultra Marathon, and most recently in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, run the Ultra Trail Australia 100 kilometres, which was last month. And she did this all while keeping that brilliantly and famous smile on her face. So today we're going to have a chat to Anna. We're going to talk about her journey into running, what her background was, why obviously now trail running and ultra running is where her passion and her focus is going to lie. But Anna, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. So good.
I'm glad we finally got there. We had some technical difficulties. First time using our new podcasting platform, so I hope there's going to be some teething issues. But I want to start lighthearted. You finally had a chance to tell your mum you did run 100 kilometres to win the race. I read that Instagram caption after UTA.
Yes, I did, and she took it very well. It's always I always feel like I always get worried about like telling my parents things, and then it's always so fine, and they took it really well. There was a reason why I never told her, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yes, she definitely knows. I think she found out about halfway through the race.
Oh, really? So it wasn't just before it. It was actually why you were mid-race.
Yeah, I think she found out. Well, I have my two sisters, and I know the middle one definitely told her.
Okay, well let's dive into it. Let's start right at the beginning. Where does the running journey start for you?
Obviously, when I was back in like high school, I was really into like 800 meters, 1500 meters, and like even 3 kilometer cross country, and I just sort of fell into that. My dad coached me a little bit, and yeah, I was really competitive. I'd go to states, I'd go to nationals, but then as soon as I left school, I went to university and I really just stopped running completely. And I also moved over to Dubai and lived in the Middle East. And yeah, I didn't come across any sort of running communities there. So I really fell out of running. And it wasn't until the pandemic came along, and I came home off a San Francisco flight and was told that, you don't really have a job anymore. I remember like hopping in the taxi going home and just feeling like, what is my purpose? What am I going to do now? Like, I don't have a job. I've been told that I need to go home and isolate for a few weeks. And yeah, it was a huge shock. So that was when I went for a jog with some friends, and I saw a group running in Centennial Park. And I asked them like, oh, who are they? And they're like, oh, that's Run Crew. Like, they're a really fast group, like elite runners. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I want to join that group. Like, that's where I want to be. So I reached out to Gary, and yeah, he let me to come to a few sessions, and I didn't have any intentions of racing. I totally just loved the training and the running process, but I definitely didn't want to race. It wasn't on my radar at all. And then I met Gary, and after a couple of weeks of training with him, he was like, you should do UTA 50. and I had no idea what UTA 50 was. So I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. I'll do UTA 50, I guess. He encouraged me to, do a race. And yeah, we had 12 weeks that we trained for UTA 50, and I ended up coming third behind Ruth Croft and Paige, who I trained with as well. And yeah, so that was really the start of it.
And that's really interesting because, I mean, not many. So, can you just? I just want to go back to that moment, Centennial Park. We're talking a couple of days that the news has broke that obviously the airline industry shutting down. Pretty difficult time, obviously, knowing that it was probably more of the unknown than anything, not knowing when it or how long you were going to be out of it for. Because I find it really interesting. I mean, we're close with the run crew. I've been to a number of their sessions activating for Pillar, and as you said, they do not run slow. And I mean, someone who's my size and comes from a rugby background, it is very difficult to understand how they get through what they can get through. I know Ben and Gary run a very tight ship there. But was it the immediate drive for you? Have you always been that way inclined, where it's if you're going to do something, you're not just I'm going to meet some friends and have a jog. You're like, no, there's something burning in me that I'm going to always take it to as far as you can go? Or was it just the idea of then getting back into both, I suppose, a competitive sense and then also being able to join a crew like Run Crew that has a social element to it as well?
Yeah, I think absolutely. One thing is I always like to be challenged, and even with flying, like I did it about 7 years as cabin crew, and I always would create challenges within that. I'd choose destinations and be like, okay, I'm going to go to this country and I'm going to hike this track. And yeah, so I always like to be challenged. And I think that's something when I heard about Run Crew and I heard like, well, they're a really elite group to be in and very fast. I was just immediately like, well, that's like, if you're going to do something, like just go all in. And that's definitely the attitude that I've brought through, like from my whole, like from the start, starting with Run Crew to where we are now. It's just like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to give it everything. And even the community that they have there, even those, the outside perspective, I think, is that Run Crew is like a really elite group and you have to be super fast to be in it. But that's not the case at all. It's such an amazing community, and they have they have elite runners, absolutely, but they also have just, your everyday runners. And I think one of their runners is, they're all like, there's runners in that group that are like 70, 80, and they're also inspiring the group as well, because everyone's like, well, when I'm that age, I want to still be at Run Crew training with this amazing group. So Ben and Gary and Katie have done an amazing job at just creating like a really nice close-knit community. And you do, like, all the Run Crew people, they look out for each other, and it's something really special to be a part of. So once I joined, I actually went in being like, okay, well, if you're going to join this group, you got to be all in. Like, you got to be ready to train hard. And whether your hard is like 3 days a week or if it's 7 days a week, you have to go into that group with like a really like positive mindset and just like take it on.
And so let's dive in there, because you obviously the story is, from the cockpit to the UTA finish line in first place, very, very, very quick journey into doing that. But obviously you explained before that you did come from an elite running background, obviously shorter distances. How, when you first started with training in with Gary, and you probably didn't realise you were going to be going in and doing these much longer races, How was your body? Like, was there a lot of muscle memory there that existed in a way? Like, did you just pull up? Like, and when you say going all in, I want to kind of dive in. Like, did you know that you were going to have to do things outside of running to actually get up to speed really quickly? And did you do that?
No, but I definitely do that now to try and keep up to speed with some of those runners in there. But when I joined Run Crew, I definitely think there's a lot of muscle memory that came back. Even it wasn't like in those years that I was doing absolutely nothing. I was still like going out, going for a jog, 5K jog here and there. And I was also doing like, I went over to Spain and I hiked the Camino Santiago trail, which is 800 kilometers across from starting in France and ending in Santiago in Spain. And I hiked that, and that took about 4.5 weeks. And So I've always made sure that I've kept really active. And so when I joined Run Crew, like I started, it's so funny, like I started running, I was running at about 60 kilometers a week. And then Gary got me up to about 100 kilometers a week. And it's so funny because I used to be like, wow, like how does anyone run 100 kilometers a week? Like this is insane. And then, just we really gradually, it was a real gradual build. It wasn't like I just went into Run Crew and started being like, okay, I'm going to run 160 Ks. I was 60 Ks, and then I gradually worked up to 80 kilometers a week. And then we got up to 100 and 110. And then I'm just, I wasn't doing any strength work at all, which is not great. But I was really lucky. I just haven't been like I never touch wood. I have not been injured, and I think that's something that really surprises a lot of people around me because yeah, there are it's quite common, especially with some of the people that I've been training with. They get an injury here and there. I have to slow down their training, but I haven't had to experience that yet, and I'm wondering if that's because of having that background in training previously, maybe, and also just yeah, I don't know where it comes from, but I do a lot of strength work now. I'm in the gym like 3 times a week now, and I realize how important it is. And I don't think I'd be able to run 150, 160, 180 kilometers a week without doing those 3 days a week in the gym, for sure.
And for those out there that maybe don't know an awful lot about ultra running and trail running particularly. Now, I mean, we work really closely with a lot of swimmers, triathletes, cyclists, and I find it really interesting that when you speak to runners, particularly long distance runners, everyone talks about your weekly program in terms of how many Ks you're clocking, right? Whereas you talk about particularly the Ironman distance of triathlon, it will always be how many hours per week. I suppose the measurable, load is so different between the two sports. Why do you think, and I mean, because I compare, full distance Ironman training and ultra running very similar in terms of probably the aerobic position you need to continually put your body in. Like at the end of the day, you have to do the time, right? Why do you think it's? I mean, yeah. My question being, are you focusing sometimes in your training on the kilometers, or is it the time on feet, or is it a mixture of both? How do you and Gary think about that from a training perspective? And maybe I'll go one step, and you can answer this even longer than the question I'm putting before you. Is how has that shifted from 12 months ago to your preparation for UTA?
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, and it's something that's come up a lot lately because, and I'm sure we'll dive into it, but when I was over in Europe, I was really focused on kilometers, and I should have only been focusing on my time, being out there for a certain amount of time and not worrying about how many kilometers I was doing. However, in Australia, so in Australia, we work on a time base. So Gary will tell me, for example, today I had to go out and I had to run for an hour and a half. And it doesn't matter he doesn't care how many kilometers I do in that hour and a half, as long as, it's all about time on feet. And I'll have certain runs that will be up to 6 hours, which will be in like lead up to big ultra trail runs, which is like, for example, I've got Tarawera coming up. So yeah, we've got a few 6-hour runs in my training schedule. So it's really time based. However, and that's what Gary focuses on, and that's what I should focus on. However, admittedly, you do sometimes get caught up in knowing, think to myself, oh, well, I know in an hour and a half I can run about 20 kilometers. And that's without considering what sort of terrain I'm running on. So sometimes I do get really carried away in how many kilometers I'm actually running. And I'll look at my clock, my watch, and it'll be like, oh, you've an hour and a half, you've run 17 kilometers. And I'll be like, oh, well, I might just go a couple of more kilometers just to hit that 20 kilometers. And I don't think it's something that I'm now receiving a few lectures on, and I don't think it's good. So I think you actually really should. Well, that's me personally. I really just need to get back to focusing on time on feet and not kilometers.
And with that time off it, I mean, that's starting to sound much more like listening to, I suppose, long endurance swimmers and certainly Ironman athletes as well. It's that time on feet seems to be that recurring theme. Whereas, you start getting down, down towards the track, and it's all splits per kilometre So it was interesting to hear you, say the kilometres. But so in an overall week leading into UTA, for example, how much time on feet were you doing, and then how much did that equate to kilometres? And what were you trying to hit from that regard? Because I'm quite keen after this to then dive into how you then in this sport even go to think about tackling nutrition.
Yeah, that's it. Nutrition is a whole other conversation for sure. So in the lead up to UTA, this is the problem. Me personally, like I always convert. Like, okay, I know how much time I should be out there, and I know how many kilometers that should convert to. So I'm always focusing on. Most of my weeks were between 150 and 180 kilometers in the lead up to UTA, and that would usually lead. We were doing about 14 hours a week, 15 hours a week, I think. Yeah, so Gary won't be happy when he listens to this because he's very time based. So I should know exactly how much time I'm out there for. I do though when you think about nutrition, even on some of my shorter runs, I always ensure that I have nutrition on me. It's just so good to practice your nutrition on short runs, super long runs, and yeah, it just helps so much at the end of the day. But yeah, did I answer your question? Like,
did you?
That sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose my question was, I mean, when you're going to start to tackle something like this, like you said you were training with Run Crew for, like, how much genuine lead up training did you do before you did your first 50K? Ooh. How many, was it months? Are you talking weeks?
12
was
weeks.
It sessions?
Yeah. So when
12 weeks before your first 50K. Okay. And in that 12 weeks, did you need to learn how to, what you were going to eat? Or it was just a crash course
Absolutely.
at that time?
It was a huge, threw myself in the deep end. So I joined Run Crew within a week. Gary was like, let's get you into a race. Let's see what you can do. So we had 12 weeks to UTA. Had never been on a trail run before. I didn't even really know where you went trail running in Sydney. And so I was really lucky. I had a friend called Bastien who is French, and he has a really good background in trail running. So he was like, come with me, I'll bring you out to the Blue Mountains and we'll do your first trail run. So I did my first trail run, not at Katoomba. It was like further, I think around Blackheath. And it was literally like, he was like, okay, so when we climb up this mountain, when we climb up this hill, we're just going to take reduce your stride. And then it was literally like he was talking to a child, like teaching me step by step, like how to trail run, how to do the sport. Yeah. I mean, everyone, how hard can running be? But he was literally like, okay, now you need to drink something. And so I'd be like, okay. So I had just ran with, I really enjoy Tailwind. That works really well for me. So we practiced with Tailwind. On my first trail run, I rolled my ankle, and then I finished, and Gary texted me and said, why did you go out there and waste your time? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, if you're going to do this, you need to go out to Katoomba and you need to really get on those hills. So then the next week we went out to Katoomba, and I went flying down Katoomba, and I honestly could not walk for a week. I went back to training and I was like, fine, I can't walk. And Gary was like, perfect. That is exactly what I wanted. So yeah, it was an absolute crash course, threw me in the deep end, but it was a lot of fun.
And so I imagine, to you, outside of your flatter running for distance, when you are tackling the hills up and down, I suppose there must be an awful lot of delayed, soreness in your legs. How did Gary, when you were getting into it, do you do a lot of prehabbing for those? I'm trying to think. When we were playing rugby, we used to do huge amounts of time in terms of prepping the joints for, I suppose, movements that you weren't being able to plan for. Obviously team sports is reactionary to what's in front of you, and I suppose essentially is so is trail running. Like, do you do a lot of proprioception training around the ankles, around the knees? Because I imagine, like, on 100 Ks, you must be semi-rolling your ankle every hour, really. Like, I mean, do you strap your ankles as well? Like, can we dive into a little bit about the preparation in terms of what you do for these races?
Absolutely. Those first 12 weeks, honestly, I didn't do anything special. I didn't even go into the gym. And I realized, I went in, I was so confident. Honestly, I went in with so much confidence into UTMB 50. And within the first 20 kilometers, I rolled my ankle. I couldn't get I decided on the day that I would try some new nutrition, and I couldn't get the gels down. Like, you name it, it went, like, anything that could go wrong went wrong on that trail race.
You broke every rule in the book.
Absolutely. I bought some new shoes for the day. I broke every rule in the book. But it's just so awesome, because then you walk away and I laugh about it now, and I'm like, I love that I just went in there with so much confidence and was like, I can win this. Yes, Ruth Croft is running and she's, a world-class runner, but I was like, sure, like, why can't I beat Ruth Croft? Like, obviously I didn't beat Ruth Croft. And I learned so many lessons that day, but it's really cool just to have, like, confidence in yourself and your training. That's what you have to go in with either way. But now,
absolutely.
Now, in terms of preparation, the gym is so important for my preparation, especially hills, especially living in Sydney, where, sometimes I go down to Heartbreak Hill and I just do reps, like running up and down. And I've done up to like 30 kilometers just running up and down Heartbreak Hill. But honestly, it's not really good enough. It's not going to help you run in Europe running up Heartbreak Hill. There's really no comparison. So I'm in the gym a lot, trying to work on my strength, and it definitely I definitely helps. I'm doing a lot of calf raises as well. That's one of the things I was told by a physio. Like, if a runner can do any strength work, it'd be calf raises, because you really don't realize, like, they're your number one muscle that you're using when you're out there running, and especially going up and down those hills. Like, especially up, you're really on your toes, and your calf muscles they're taking the load. So the first thing I do when I go into a gym session is just do calf raises, weighted calf raises for like the first 10-15 minutes. But in terms of, and that's pretty much, like, I feel like a lot of with trail running, because every trail is so different. Like, going into Tarawera, it's going to be like a really fast race and maybe not as technical. Whereas when I was, racing over in Europe, it's really so much slower and so technical, and you're hiking up those hills because they're huge. So it's hard to prepare, like, to have a routine that you can use for every race. And also, I just like to try and keep things as simple as possible. I don't want to overthink it. I don't want to overcomplicate it. I would honestly say that the best preparation for me is just to be going out, like, doing your time on your feet, practicing your nutrition, and getting in the gym and doing your strength work. And that's pretty much what I would say in terms of preparation.
And what about are you doing in terms of preparation or prehab or rehab? Do you do is there quite a lot of stretching involved in what you're doing? Are you doing foam roller work or any type of percussion? There's 1,000 ways to now massage a gun. You've got Hyperice guns, Normatec boots. Are you a gadget person, or is ultra running definitely free spirited, free of technology?
You know what?
There's got to be one little vice or gadget that you've got. I mean, I noticed there's an opportunity here for a sponsor, but you said your watch just before, and you didn't say your Garmin or your Coros. So Garmin or Coros listening there's a spot there that Anna looks down next time and says, "Oh, well, when I check my Garmin."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I love it. No, I don't have a sponsor watch actually at the moment. So yeah, we're
Yeah.
definitely open to that.
Watch this space. Yeah, absolutely. So are you doing like are you doing are you doing recovery boots with like compression skins? Particularly when you're obviously going to be traveling a lot now. Have you thought about those? Maybe some of the more finer finer technologies that people are now thinking about that 360 athlete in terms of how you're going to look after yourself in between races or even immediately post training as well.
Absolutely. It's actually so important, and it's definitely something that I can do better. And I mean, I'm sure we can all do better in terms of these like one percenters. I'm a 2 times U athlete, so I have obviously I use the recovery types as well from 2 times U, especially when I'm flying a lot and moving around a lot. Like if I'm going on a plane, I'll put on my 2 times U recovery tights, or even just going for like a really casual jog in the afternoon. If I have a double session, I'll wear my recovery tights. Um, I do try and roll a lot. I do get a lot of acupuncture done. I really enjoy acupuncture, and I really honestly feel like it helps in terms of not getting injured. If I get like the tiniest little bit of niggle, I'll go and get some acupuncture done. I go to a guy, and he tells me that, you know, going out, doing like rolling after you running and putting on your recovery boots. He's like, it's like brush. It's like he refers it to like brushing your teeth, like or like what do you call it when you're like getting in the plaque?
Flossing.
Flossing, yeah, he calls
Flossing.
it flossing. So he's like, it's so important to floss, and like that is those 1%ers, like getting down, like so. I'll try and actually do like roll out on before I go for a run, just to help activate my muscles. So to be honest, I only spend about 10 minutes, but yeah, I'll do the rolling out before I go for a run. And then when I come back, I usually try and use my recovery boots, which are really awesome as well. And I especially, like a lot of people are always interested in like how you manage flying and running, and the recovery boots have been awesome. Like when you get off a plane, you sometimes you feel a little bit swollen, and I would just put my recovery boots on, and I feel pretty good instantly. So yeah, I'd say, to be honest, rolling and recovery boots and my recovery tights with 2 times U are my real go-tos in terms of, without talking about nutrition, in terms of purely just like things that I can do. That's what I'll go to.
We'll dive into what helps you get to sleep in a moment. But it was interesting. I love that analogy where you said it's like flossing, because I think everyone in the world knows how important flossing is for your teeth, except so many people, so many of us, myself included, put it aside and say, no, I definitely do not have another minute in my night to floss.
That's it.
Even though I know how important it is. It's like, I know how beneficial it is going to be putting compression tights on for this flight. But no, I just don't have time to do it. I love the analogy of flossing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's so easy to be like, oh, I don't have time, and it's like, no, you need to make time for these.
Yeah,
yeah,
and absolutely. There's there's so much amazing equipment out there now. Like as you said, like you're looking at compression garments. 2 times you do an amazing job with those. I've used those before. But then look, let's dive into it and talk about sleep. And we can talk about potentially the triple magnesium from Pillar, and if that's how you found that helping. But with I talk to so many athletes now, particularly in this ultra endurance space, that really struggle to sleep because of the hours on feet, and you get this sensation of almost numbness in the muscles, in the fact that then your legs become like you're so tired, but you get restless leg syndrome which keeps you awake, meaning. People, like there's so many athletes out there that don't realize why they can't fall asleep, but it's your body is reacting to such trauma, but not like it's not contact trauma like other sports. It's trauma as in particularly running. You have literally been hitting pavement or trails for so long, and your muscles are literally just coming back out of that zone, and they're almost feeling like they're still vibrating, and that's essentially what's keeping people awake. Have you ever suffered from that? Have you had to change things around your sleep, or are you quite strict on how many hours a night you're getting in terms of your recovery as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like sleep is so important, and that's one thing with flying. I've always it's been super hard to manage, but it's just something that I really have to prioritize, and I've just sort of taught myself to sleep like anywhere you can at any time that you can. Yeah, so I mean, as soon as I come off a flight, like straight away, I go to sleep for a few hours, and then I'll get up and I'll try and stick to like the time zone that I'm in. And oh, yeah, but I can't say that I definitely after a race, I've always that night, you just sort of know that I'm probably not going to sleep that well tonight because you've just run 100 kilometers. And yeah, your muscles really, you can almost like, yeah, like you said, feel them vibrating. But during training, I'd say that really I haven't experienced it during training, but purely because our training program is really designed around as well, like recovery. And Gary always says if it's worth doing, it's worth absorbing. So yeah, we definitely he always makes sure that like the first it's interesting, like he said in the lead up to my first trail race at UTA 50, I didn't really have like a taper period. We really just sort of only the week before we kind of slowed things down a little bit. And he said he does this so that the next race, like it's like a long term plan. So the next race it actually becomes easier and easier to like just I wish he was here just to explain it. But yeah, it's really interesting. Like we don't do like leading into each race. Like my body just starts adapting. It's so interesting how your body can just adapt to your training. And yeah, it's he designs his programs around so recovery is it gets easier the more we do. So I haven't really dealt with like that sleeping issues, which are really good. And yeah, I think I'm always tired, so always 8 hours night. I always go to bed so early, and I just wake up when I wake up. I'm very good at
Yeah,
sleeping, Damien.
and I think if you've I imagine I think if you've come from that airline industry, you guys literally you were taught you're like bats. You were taught to just sleep when you can. You sleep upside down if you have to. Get it done
100%.
because as you said, you're going to be turning around in another day and getting on a flight.
That's it.
So I mean, I know. So the plan now is you're going to continue to still work in the air as well. Is that the plan, or is there going to be a period of time? Because I want to dive into nutrition, and I don't want to point the finger, but I've had some pretty average meals on planes.
Me too.
And I want to work out how. Yeah, yeah. I want to work out obviously what's the plan now leading into Tarawera. Going to be a massive race for you. You're not going to go under the radar anymore, which is really exciting for you. And I get the sense that you don't want that either. But what does the training block now look like leading into that?
Yeah. So actually, I'm not. So I am moving away from the airline industry now. It was, more serious running became actually the more challenging. It like the airline industry before COVID, I found was super flexible. Coming back from COVID, I definitely don't have the same flexibility, and I've certainly found it really challenging around flights. For example, I had a race at the start of the year in March, and I had to do an LA, and I landed from an LA on like a Thursday and had to race on a Saturday. And due to the not being hydrated enough, I really struggled from cramping. And it was really that moment that I thought I just can't keep juggling the two, because it's just like you don't realize how challenging and how you struggle from like hydration, like flying all the time. It really takes it out of you. So yeah, found it really like it is super challenging, and so now I'm going to move away from it because I have some big goals within the trail running community, and like I said, I like to go all in on everything that I do. So I've found another opportunity which will help me create a little bit more balance and a better routine around running. And I said to Gary, because my lead up to UTA 100 was certainly a really bumpy road. And I said to Gary, like, I don't want to have that same experience again going into Tarawera, because Tarawera is a really important race and it really sets you up for the rest of the year. So I really want to do well there. It's so important. And I went into UTA 100 with not a lot of confidence due to things that had happened previously. So I really want to go into Tarawera full of confidence. And so we've sat down and Gary has created a masterpiece as he likes to call it, program. Which, yeah, it's back to high mileage and definitely a lot of definitely focusing on speed as well, especially because Tarawera seems to be a very fast 100K. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. I've taken a couple of weeks off because it has been a really big year, but we're just getting back into that, back into training this week. Like, I've been running the whole time, but really showing up at run crew sessions again and really starting to focus again. But it was really good to have just a couple of weeks off just to, it's hard. I feel like Australian athletes, we don't really get snow. So like how they do in Europe and when they all take the winter off, whereas Australia, we just keep going, and we don't we have races all year long, and we don't really get a chance to sort of switch off for a couple of, for a period of time. So I'm had a couple of weeks off and I'm feeling super motivated now to just really get back into training.
You sound it. And after and I mean it's I was literally about to ask a question then. What do you like? I think to you, yeah. I mean, being in Australia here, we have, particularly in Sydney, not overly hot, not blisteringly cold. From a climate perspective, and probably an incredible place to train. But also, as you said, there, not an amazing place to train because you have to drive, hour and 40 minutes to get to the closest trail, as you said, that may be worth training on, which is, I suppose would always come into it for someone who's doing it, that wants to go competitively into trail running. And I see now why these, beautiful mountain villages like Annecy and Chamonix now house so many well-known trail runners, because when you can have it at your backyard, it would make a huge difference. But you got to put up with what we've got. We've got beautiful sunshine here that you can train in. So why maybe some of your competitors in Europe are freezing cold? You can enjoy the sun.
Definitely.
But I wanted to ask, what's on the plans after Tarawera, back for the remainder of 2023? What's on the radar? What's the goals?
Yeah.
And have you kind of mapped that out yet, or is it a bit of a wait and see feel after that in terms of qualification?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a wait and see due to Tarawera, because if I can do well in Tarawera and get in the top 2, that would automatically qualify me to get a golden ticket, which would allow me to enter into the Western States Endurance Run, which is in California. And it's just I've never done it, and it seems like such an amazing event. Ruth Croft from New Zealand won it last year, and she's a huge inspiration for me. So it's definitely something that I really want to do, and I really want to do it well. I'm naturally quite competitive, so yeah, really, that is my number one goal. However, if that doesn't happen, then we have UTMB, which is over in Europe, and those two are such completely different races. So it really depends on Tarawera and then how we map out our training for the rest of the year. However, I spent some time in Europe this year, and I came before I went to Europe. I was thinking, there's no way I can train for a European race in Australia, or there's no way I can train for a race in America in Australia. But actually, coming back from Europe and spending 3 months over there training, we totally can. We 100% can, and there are so many beautiful places in Australia that we can train for these races and still, I think, perform really well overseas. So that was a really good reminder for me that, you don't have to be training in France to be competitive in UTMB. And I think that's something that we should all remember, that we actually do have so many great resources in Australia. And yeah, maybe we might have to go into the gym a little bit more to do some extra strength work to help us get us up those mountains. But yeah, we can totally train for it here, for sure.
I think there's so many examples in sport where there are success cases where people go and put themselves exactly where they need to be at the right time, and there are other times where there are, the most successful athletes in the world that got homesick. I know there's an amazing story. Rafael Nadal he was too homesick to even leave the island of Mallorca and go to Madrid, to the point where he said, no, I'm just training. I'm training here. This is what I'm doing. I'm in the backyard, and he's never left, and it hasn't seemed to bother him too much. And as you said, climate's one thing. I see a lot of cyclists, that they're training in sauna-like conditions to try and prepare for races. So as you said, if there's a will, there's a way. You can manipulate. If you can avoid getting on a plane, as you've said, which we know dehydrates you. What long flights does to the body? I mean, you know better than anyone. There is a reason why it's really difficult to win. We always used to struggle playing rugby. We would always really struggle to go to South Africa mid-season because 1 week travelling across the world it's just not enough to prepare your body for it. So if you can avoid those long flights, I think is probably one of those things that really puts those athletes towards the back end of the season in a good way from a recovery
Maybe the
perspective.
only thing we're missing here in Australia is the altitude, like being able to sleep up at high altitude. But that's something that you go over. I definitely will plan to go over to Europe or to America and a few weeks before it just to adapt to the training. But in summary, to answer your question, like my goal is to be more international, like focus on international next year and not so much the Australian races. And that's just because, you run here, but you kind of just want to see where it's so good to go over and, compete with the best and see where you're really at. And that's something I'm really intrigued by and really interested in. And I want to be running with the best athletes in the world and the best trail races in the world. So that's my goal for next year. And I'm not saying I'm going to conquer the world next year, but I'm certainly hoping that I'll walk away with a lot of experiences, a lot of positive and probably a lot of negative, because that comes with the trail running 100-kilometer races. And my next year, I really want to step it up to 100 miles. So that would be like that Western States or UTMB. So that'll be 160 kilometers, I believe. So I'm really excited to like take the next step up. And I think my body really handles the longer the better. And that's something when I look back at the races that I've done this year, it's like, and last year, the races that I perform better in are the longer ones. So I think that is definitely the next step for me.
Well, we're looking forward to watching you do it, Anna, and I'm sure Gary has another another masterpiece.
He's hilarious.
Once you get in that top two in Tarawera and you get your qualification, we might have to get you on as a dual guest and get Gary to show us that masterpiece.
Yes.
But knowing about Run Crew, I'm sure there's quite a few secret boxes that they don't let anyone under the hood with. But Anna, thanks so much for the time today. It's been awesome to chat. It's been inspirational, obviously, getting to know you and your journey and listening to you about how dedicated that you've turned into this space so quickly. It is a massive lesson for I think anyone listening to if you wanted to reignite a passion, that it doesn't matter how long you spend out of a sport. Once it's there, the fire's still 100%. Burning, and you can really turn things in. Yeah, and I suppose that's the beautiful thing about sport as well. You can. You really can turn it. You can turn something that's probably quite momentous in your life, like a pandemic, and having the job that you love put on hold for a long time. But silver lining is an amazing thing.
It really is, and my perspective, and I'm super lucky. I'm really surrounded by so many, like a great support. But my parents always tell me, Anna, you can get a career anytime, but you can only experience and run and chase your dreams now. Like now it's happening and you need to go for it. So that's something I think everyone can take on board, is just I think we get really caught up in what's my career. I'm absolutely I have moments where I'm not sure what I want to do, but when you find something that you're super passionate about, and that for me that's running, opportunities are now becoming endless. So yeah, it's amazing. I totally encourage everyone to chase their dreams.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, Anna, we're going to be in a long line in about 18 months to try and get you back on this podcast. But thank you so much. You're officially the first guest we've got. Producer Jared in the background. We are testing our new platform out, so hopefully this works. But thanks again, Anna, and really appreciate you joining us. And sorry, all the best for next season.
Amazing.
So thank you for tuning in to the first of our Pillar Performance podcasts. What a treat it was there to have a great chat with Anna. To learn more about where she started in running to where she is now, and obviously what her plans are for a big 2023 season and beyond. And she's definitely someone I'm sure we're going to see a lot of on the world stage. So for those of you who are listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave us a 5-star review. That would be very helpful. And if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to try and give us a like on that. And if you'd like to be updated about when we're releasing our next show with our next guest, just make sure you click that subscribe button. Wishing everyone all the best for upcoming races and training. Make sure we stay healthy.